On today's episode, we will be taking a look at Earthworm Jim HD on the Xbox 360. Earthworm Jim is one of my great childhood memories. Despite me not beating the game until I was older, I could tell you just about every secret of the first level like I was describing in the back of my hand. Thanks to the numerous moves I've had to do in my life and cruel acts of nature against my Super Nintendo, I have been without Jim outside of the crappy Game Boy Advance ports for quite some time. So when I heard it was being remade for Xbox, PS3, and Wii, I couldn't wait. Does this game still kick butts and take names, or should it have stayed buried? The story in Earthworm Jim has always been weak and simple, so I'm not going to talk about it much or deduct any points from the review. I'm just going to go let it slide for this. Where it is at in the game series is in the gameplay itself. The game will have you running through platforming levels, race levels, an escort stage, and a bungee jumping stage. For the most part, all of these work great. However, if you die, please keep in mind that what other reviewers have been calling flaws or errors in programming, they aren't. The controls totally work, just like the original. Also keep in mind that this is a remake of a classic game, meaning that it is very, very difficult. It's not really a game for casual players, or at least it wasn't until now. Thanks to the inclusion of easier difficulty settings, now anybody can jump into Earthworm Jim HD. The easier difficulties add directional arrows in the game's more confusing areas, and boss hints, which can be toggled on or off. And for the pure classic gamer, original mode is available for play, keeping the game at a cruel difficulty. However, with the original mode, it would have been cool if you also could have had the original game with it. With that, I'm about to bring up the game's worst issue. While most of the new stuff is cool, like being able to switch from your Super Plasma just to regular without wasting all your shots is amazing. It's just a lot of the stuff in the game plays hit and miss. This is the most prevalent in the graphics department. Some of Jim's sprites look just plain awkward, almost giving him the appearance of a mentally retarded sock puppet. Andy's asteroids, which take up the majority of the game's racing stages, is now rendered impossible to play because it looks too good and distracting. And while the new music is okay, it just does not live up to the old music. And while we're on the topic of sound, do not even get me started on whoever did the voice. Whoever did the voice this go-around should be fired. The voice was pure awful, and it is just blasphemy to the original voice actor and all of the clips from Earthworm Jim. The game also includes co-op. This mode is a decent distraction, but it fails to really provide long-lasting thrills, considering how every level is just a sprint to the end with 2 to 4 players, with levels very weakly themed from the single-player campaign, with enemies just vomited all over the place. I blew through it in about an hour with my little brother. There are also 3 bonus levels, none of which are really that fun or important, despite the last one having an amazing cameo from Keyboard Cat. There's also online co-op support, but nobody seems to be playing. All in all, if you're desperate for Earthworm Jim, this is a good buy. However, the Genesis version is $2 less on Wii right now. But for $10, you get all the extra bells and whistles. But just keep in mind, they are not necessary to have a good time. On the positive side, the graphics are good for the most part. It's a pretty faithful remake as well. And the bells and whistles are added for longevity. The voice acting is probably the worst part of the game. The new stuff plays hit and miss all too often, especially in the graphics department, and none of the extras are really that necessary, nor do they provide more than just a distraction. I'm giving the game a 7.5, and I advise to wait for a deal of the week or a price drop. But if you can't wait, it is still a good buy.